Hi everyone, sorry I couldn't make it to class today, but I'm here to share with you my final video presentation. I'd like to start with my grade level. I had a 4th grade female student. I chose her because I felt like she was a pretty good reader, although she did have some things that just made her stand out. So I wondered what they were, and I assessed her on 3 different reading assessment areas. The 3 areas are phonemic awareness, vocabulary, and comprehension. Through those testings, I found that the reader was very fluent in understanding of comprehension and different things with reading with very strong skills. But what I found for a weakness is her porosity and her expression with reading. I came up with some reading strategies to help her. First, I modeled for her how you should read with porosity and expression. Next, I went in and highlighted words in a passage for her to read and use porosity while she was working on how to read. Using those highlighted words from the passage, she knew which words were key words for her to use exaggeration and practice her porosity. Now, through those words, she gained a kind of knowledge, a kind of sense to when she could read on her own, when she should use that exaggeration. And oftentimes students don't really understand that they're lacking that. They need to hear a model. So those 2 activities really helped her, I felt, to understand when she should use it and to benefit her in the fact that she'd be a more interesting reader to listen to, and even for her reading on her own, she'd be more interested and engaged in her own readings. From her assessment scores, she scored best in comprehension. Vocabulary, phonemic awareness, both scored about average or a little bit higher than average, but still something stood out. So I listened to her really use her skills and her sounding out of words, different things you could do, but she sounded really monotone, really plain, really bland. So I tried to show an example of how you should read a word with a little bit of expression. Anytime there was quotes, anytime there is exclamation mark or a question mark, is a perfect chance to use porosity. And I modeled that for her, and I had her try it herself. Using the running record that my master teacher used on her, I focused on what the running record said, as well as creating my own rubric for the student to read, and after that I wrote and graded her myself on what I thought, what areas she was good and what areas she could work on more improvement. And I felt like she did a very good job reading. She was a good reader. She just lacked in expression. And when you want to read, you read lively. You want to be interesting and have people want to listen to you. And when you read without porosity, it just sounds really boring. And so what I did was I added a few activities we could work on, and over time I could see improvement. She really figured out that when you read, you don't just read words on paper, you're reading things that are symbolic to real things, and these real things, when we speak, not everything has the same value. There's certain words that you want to express more, certain words that are more important in a sentence. So she really had to realize that, and once she realized that, her reading became better, her reading comprehension became better, and it was already pretty good, but it just solidified her, and she felt more confident with her reading. She eventually liked to have other people listen to her read, and I felt like her improvement was almost drastic. She did a very, very good job from the beginning till the last day of me working with her. I think in the future, I would even include cue words with using cue cards, index cards, different other strategies to highlight the word in a sentence that is important. Another way of checking for understanding would be to ask them, okay, what words in this sentence do you think you should use porosity or use extra expression on? And hopefully they can get clues, or you can guide them towards having the correct answers, and when they read, correct them so that they know which words they should use extra expression on and which words they can just read in that monotone voice or a less expressive voice. When they put the value on those words, that's when the reading sounds good. That's when they're excited about their reading. And working with students that don't understand that, you realize that it's just words on paper to them. They kind of get the meaning, but they don't really understand it. And having the student use extra expression on certain keywords really brings out what the author is trying to say, and also if the student really understands and comprehends what they're trying to understand and what the author wants them to understand. I could tell the student had good comprehension because when I asked her to summarize it back to me, it was very clear, very detailed. I don't think she missed any type of clue or any external thing. She really had everything right, exactly with what the author said, nothing extra. But it was really just her voice and the way it sounded that was the weakness. She understood, but she could have been more lively when she was reading. Her vocabulary was excellent. She knew what all the words meant. If I asked her what a word was and what it meant, she could use it in a sentence. She could clearly understand it. So I could tell her vocabulary was just on grade level or better. Whenever she made a mistake, she knew she had made a mistake and she self-corrected. So I felt like that was very good of her. She was an excellent reader in that sense. The improvement area is almost like a second tier level of skill. I don't think porosity is maybe as key to reading as comprehension of vocabulary, but it is very important if you listen to someone read, and eventually for comprehension, for further material that might be a little more difficult, I feel like the importance of porosity and expression and exaggeration is almost needed. You want to be very lively and in character when you're reading. Working one-on-one with the student was really beneficial to both me and the student. I felt like when I had a chance to work with the student one-on-one, I could really focus without any distractions and clearly state where they could be corrected or what they did good. Whatever they did well, what I did was I immediately complimented them. Oh, you did that very well. That's the right way to say that word. Whenever they had mistakes or whenever they needed correcting, I would correct them fast and immediate and show them this is what you said and this is the way it should be said. And through doing that a couple times, I could tell my student she really figured it out fast, and she started self-correcting quickly. I learned that when you work with a student, you have to be patient because there were times where you'd almost have to correct the same word a couple times, 2-3 times in a row. But it's okay because eventually, maybe the next day they'll get it, or maybe the next hour they'll get it. But the idea is stay with them, stay on their pace. Don't jump too far ahead and don't go too slow. If you feel like they're getting it, go ahead and move on. She was a very good person to work with. I had a great time working with her. She was very intelligent. I felt like she was above her grade level for 4th grade. And it was a pleasure working with her, and I look forward to working with more students. At the very end, I had her summarize and read another passage, this time with no highlighted text, no underlining. She did a very good job. She read on her own with porosity. I could tell her improvement level was just huge. She went from reading words very monotone and bland, and just every word sounded the same, all the way to you never knew the volume, the pitch that she was going to use, and it made for more lively reading and more interesting to listen to. I was very happy to work with her. She did an excellent job. I also found some skills that I'm going to use in the future. One of them using that highlighting in text where students can see which words to use and say them with a little bit more expression and porosity. Another one I'm going to use is the modeling. I felt like in the beginning she was almost laughing when I was reading, and I had to almost tell her, no, this is the way we're supposed to read. Reading is supposed to be fun, and it's okay. And she eventually understood that, and she tried it out herself. And it took a little while. It wasn't immediate where she understood, but eventually she got it. She was a very good reader with porosity. She had a lot of character in her voice, and I really liked working with her. I felt like we both learned a lot from each other, and she did a very good job.